Okay, today's topic is adenovirus. Now, adenovirus, from the name, you can understand that adenovirus name came from that it was isolated from the adenoid tissues of human, and they have a property they can replicate and produce disease in respiratory tract, gastrointestinal tract, urinary tract, and in the eye. The infections which are caused by adenovirus, they are subclinical, and the virus it persists in hosts for many months. And there are around 52 serotypes, and one third of these serotypes they are responsible for most of the cases of human adenovirus disease, and few of them they serve as model for cancer induction in animals. Morphology. Morphologically, it is a double-stranded DNA virus. It has icosahedral symmetry and measures 70 to 90 nanometer in diameter. And the genome has a capsid which is composed of 252 capsomeres. And in this capsid, it has 12 pentone bases. And these pentone bases, they have a unique property that they have a fiber projecting from these pentone bases 12 vertices or pentone bases, and rest of the capsid is composed of 240 hexon capsomeres. It is non-enveloped. The hexon, the pentone, and fibers, they constitute major antigens of adenovirus, and they are important in classification of this virus and for the diagnosis purpose. The DNA genome is linear and double-stranded. Particular about pentone bases is that they have toxin-like activity, and it causes rapid appearance of cytopathic effects and causes detachment of the cells from the surface on which they are growing. Fibers, they have type-specific antigens. These antigens are important in serotyping, and they have hemagglutinating activity. So fibers are basically rod-shaped structure which is anchored on the pentone bases, and these are important because they have specific antigens which can be used for serotyping, and then they help in attaching to the host cell receptors, and they have a hemagglutinating activity. This is the structure of adenovirus. If you can see, this is it has a icosahedral symmetry. It has a DNA genome. Here is the DNA genome, and these if you can appreciate these are the pentone base, and on this is anchored a fiber-like structure which is rod-shaped and has a knob at the distal end. This fiber has property of binding to the host cell receptors. It has hemagglutinating property, and then we have these structures. These are hexons, and then we have core protein, and we have terminal protein. And this type of arrangement, it gives a appearance of space vehicle arrangement or appearance, which is typical of adenovirus. Then is classification. The Adenovidae is a family to which adenovirus belongs, and Adenovidae family is classified into two genera: masked adenovirus, which infects the mammals, then aviadenovirus, which infects the bird. There are around 52 now. There are 52 distinct antigenic types, which has been isolated from humans and also from various animals. And these human adenovirus, they have been divided into 8 groups, that is A to G, and the group B has been further subdivided into P1 and B2. That makes it total of 8 groups. And this classification is based on their genetic, physical, chemical, and biological properties. They are further divided into serotypes, which is based on the type of specific antigen which is present on the pentone bases and fibers. Serotypes, they are further identified by the neutralization test. So this is a classification. So it has been classified into 8 groups, basically A to G. right? And B is further subclassified into B1 and B2. And then they have been further classified. So we have around 52 serotypes and group is from A to G. And B is further subdivided into B1 and B2. And then these groups have been further classified on the basis of the hemagglutinating properties. That is, they can lyse the RBCs of monkey or rat. They can be partial or complete hemolysis. And then they have been classified on the percentage of GC content present in DNA. And then on their oncogenic potential, how they are able to cause tumorigenicity in vivo, and the effects they can be seen in vitro transformation of cells. So if you see in this, the group A, it has the lowest GC content, it does not have any hemagglutination property, and it has the highest oncogenic potential. Pathogenesis. Adenovirus, they can infect and replicate in epithelial cells of respiratory tract, gastrointestinal tract, genitourinary tract, and in the eye. And they do not spread beyond regional lymph nodes. Group C is responsible for latent infections which persist for years in adenoids and tonsils, and they shed in feces for many months after initial infection. So there is always, because of the presence or persistence of the virus and because of the latent infection, there is an intermittent shedding of virus, especially from the feces. Most adenovirus, they replicate in intestinal epithelium after ingestion and produce subclinical infection as compared to overt symptoms. About 1/3 of the human serotypes are commonly associated with the human illnesses. Now, it has so many serotypes, but single serotype may cause different clinical diseases. Similarly, even one serotype can cause same clinical, more than one serotype can cause same clinical illnesses. The adenovirus 1 to 7 are more common and more predominant worldwide, and it contributes to 5% of the respiratory disease, especially in young children, and it is less common in comparison to in adults. And most of the infections are mild and self-limited. Rarely or occasionally it can target some organ, particularly eye or GIT tract. Now coming to respiratory diseases, it can cause respiratory infection, and there would be typical presentation like cough, nasal congestion, fever, sore throat. These symptoms are commonly seen in infants and children, and the group which is involved is C group. And it can also cause pneumonias in children, and it is responsible for about 10 to 20% of cases of pneumonia in childhood. And the serotype 3, 7, 21 of adenovirus are basically responsible, and the mortality rate of pneumonia is 8 to 10% in very young children. It can also cause acute respiratory disease syndrome or ARDS among military recruits, where it will present as fever, sore throat, nasal congestion, cough, malaise. Sometimes it can progress or lead to pneumonia also. So in respiratory tract, you can have patient, or it can affect, majorly it affects basically children, and it can also affect adults, where it causes pneumonia, and basically it can cause ARDS, or it can cause pneumonia or pharyngitis. Then is eye infection. Eye infection, basically there would be very mild ocular involvement, which is maybe part of respiratory pharyngeal syndrome. Other thing which it can cause is pharyngoconjunctival fever. This occurs as an outbreak in children during summer camps. This is commonly also known as swimming pool conjunctivitis, and this is caused by type 3 and 7 serotype of adenovirus. Here it lasts only for 1 to 2 weeks and recovers completely without any lasting sequelae as an outcome. Other thing which it can cause in eye is epidemic keratoconjunctivitis, and this is more serious as compared to pharyngoconjunctival fever, and this occurs in adults, and it is highly contagious, and source of infection is sinks and hand towels. Here the presentation would be conjunctivitis followed by keratitis. This resolves within 2 weeks, but there may be subepithelial opacities present in the cornea for up to 2 years. This is caused by serotypes 8, 19 and 37. Now GIT tract, here it has been isolated in abundance from the feces, and mainly serotypes 40 and 41. They have been associated with infantile gastroenteritis, which accounts for 5 to 15% of the cases of viral gastroenteritis, especially in the young children. And this is found abundantly in diarrheal stools and can be detected from the stool sample directly by ELISA. But the enteric adenovirus, they are very difficult to culture. They cannot be cultivated. Apart from this, respiratory tract infection and then gastrointestinal tract infection, they can also cause severe diseases, especially in the immunocompromised patients. Especially, it is more common in the patient who are a transplant recipient, where it can cause respiratory disease, and it may progress to pneumonia, which may be fatal. And in liver transplant, it can cause adenovirus hepatitis in children. Especially in the AIDS patient, the patient suffer from a prolonged or persisting gastroenteritis or diarrhea due to adenovirus. And type 11 and type 21, they may cause acute hemorrhagic cystitis in children, especially boys. Coming to lab diagnosis, depending on the site of infection, the specimen has to be collected from the affected site as early as possible. So we can collect throat swab, we can collect conjunctival swab, we can collect genital swab, we can also collect stool, urine for the sample for the diagnosis. But we have to be very clear that the duration of the excretion of virus, it varies among various clinical illnesses. So that has to be kept in mind during collection and during diagnosis of the adenovirus. As in case of common cold, it can be isolated, or it would be more commonly shed from or present in the throat from 1 to 3 days. Similarly, in pharyngoconjunctival fever, it would be seen in 3 to 5 days, can be isolated from throat, stool and eyes. In the patient of keratoconjunctivitis, for 2 weeks, it can be isolated from eye, 3 to 6 weeks from throat and stool of children with respiratory illness, and it has prolonged or shed or present in stool, throat, urine of immunocompromised patient up to 2 to 12 months. So this is very important when you collect the sample, and from which site you are collecting, for which syndrome you are collecting. That makes the diagnosis clear. Then is isolation. Now the isolation of virus is done by various cell culture techniques, and this requires human cell culture lines. We can use here HeLa cell culture line, Hep2 cell culture line, BK cell lines. These are sensitive but difficult to manage, maintain. So these can be cultured on these cell culture lines, human cell culture lines, and you can look for cytopathic effect. In case of adenovirus, you will see there would be granular clumping, or the cells would enlarge and appear like clusters of grapes. And apart from this, you can also do immunofluorescence staining by using fluorescent tagged anti-hexon antibody. Hemagglutination inhibition tests and neutralization tests can be done. Then we can also do shell vial technique. Now this shell vial technique is basically done prior to culture, and the idea of doing this is to basically enhance or facilitate the viral replication. So the isolation or detection of time of the virus is reduced. Then is we can also directly detect the virus from the specimen by electron microscopy, ELISA, and by latex agglutination test. Serology, yes, serology can be done. We have to take the paired sera and we have to look for the rise in antibody titer. And again, antibodies in patient sera can also be detected by ELISA, CFT, hemagglutination inhibition test, neutralization test. Molecular techniques are also useful like PCR, restriction endonuclease digestion, DNA hybridization can also be done. Treatment, there is no specific antiviral treatment available for this. We always give the symptomatic treatment for the adenovirus infection. Next is parvovirus. Now parvovirus parvo means small. So parvoviruses are the smallest of the DNA viruses, and it belongs to family Parvoviridae. They have icosahedral symmetry. They are non-enveloped viruses, and they contain single-stranded DNA. The interest of human interest of virus is human parvovirus B19, because this is the only known parvovirus which is pathogenic for humans, and it has tropism for erythroid progenitor cells. Now, how this parvovirus B19 got its name? The history is that in 1974, Kozart et al. He first identified B19 while evaluating tests for hepatitis B surface antigen, and the name originates from the coding of the serum sample. It was at number 19 in panel B that gave anomalous result when tested by counter immunoelectrophoresis and radioimmunoassay. That is how it got its name parvovirus B19. So the family Parvoviridae, it consists of three genera: Dependovirus, Parvovirus, and Erythrovirus. The genus Dependovirus, you can understand from the name itself, it means that it depends on the second helper virus to replicate. It cannot replicate on its own. It is a defective kind of virus, and it replicates only in association with the second helper virus, and this does not cause illness by themselves, and nor it alters the infection which is caused by the helper virus, and it is usually associated with adenovirus. So it is also known as adeno associated viruses. They are not pathogenic to humans. Then is genus Parvovirus. Parvovirus includes the viruses, basically animal viruses, which are of veterinary importance, such as feline panleukopenia virus and canine parvovirus. The third genus, that is erythrovirus, it consists of B19, the only member of Parvoviridae family which is known to cause disease in humans. So parvovirus B19 or B19 virus, it is a causative agent of erythema infectiosum, commonly also called as fifth disease, because it was the fifth of the six classified exanthematous diseases of childhood, which means it is presented as a mild viral illness of children, and there is a erythematous rash and also known as exanthematous disease, and there is a polyarthralgia or arthritis syndrome which is seen in immunocompetent adults. Apart from the other diseases of childhood which cause exanthema, apart from fifth disease which is caused by the parvovirus B19 are chickenpox, roseola, measles, rubella, and the fifth disease, which is erythema infectiosum, which is caused by parvovirus B19. So what are the infections, human infection, which is caused by B19 virus? Initially, the first presentation would be flu-like illness. Here, the presentation would be like malaise, headache, myalgia, and rhinorrhea. After this would be erythema infectiosum. Here, there would be presentation of cutaneous rash, arthalgia, aplastic crisis. It can also infect pregnant women. In reinfection, if there is reinfection in a pregnant woman, there would be no adverse effects. But if there is non-immune but seronegative pregnant mother, then it can cause hydrops fetalis, leading to fetal death. It can also cause chronic B19 infection, where it can lead to chronic anemia, leukopenia, and thrombocytopenia. This occurs because it has tropism for the erythroid precursor cells, which is going to affect all the cells which are important in erythropoiesis, causing infection and then destruction, and finally leading to chronic infection by the parvovirus. So morphology of parvovirus, that is B19 virus, it is extremely small virus measuring 18 to 26 nanometer in diameter. It is non-enveloped. It has icosahedral capsid. The viral genome contains a single-stranded DNA measuring 4,000 to 6,000 bases in length. It has negative strand DNA, and the genome, it codes for many proteins, which includes 3 structural, 1 major non-structural, and several smaller proteins. Now this is important, pathogenesis and immunity. B19 virus, it has a selective tropism for 2 types of cells, that is RBC, precursor cells, and endothelial cells present in the blood vessels. Now this virus, it infects the rapidly dividing erythrocyte precursor cells present in the bone marrow cells, erythrocyte cells from the fetal liver, and erythroid leukemia cells. Basically, it infects the erythroid precursor cells, whether they are present in bone marrow cells, fetal liver cells, and then it destroys these cells after infection, causing aplastic anemia. And when they infect the endothelial cells present in the blood vessel, it leads to erythema infectiosum. It has been demonstrated that B19 virus, it first enters, the route of transmission is through the nasopharynx or upper respiratory tract, and then it spreads to the blood. It reaches the blood and causes viremia. Now once it reaches the blood, it infects the mitotically active erythroid precursor cells present in the bone marrow and establishes the infection. If you see here, the baby on the right side, the picture with the baby of the baby, if you see it, it is more common in children, and it is called as fifth disease because the typical rash, it appears on the cheeks of the child as if of giving appearance of slapped cheek rash, the typical of the fifth disease or erythema infectiosum. So basically this virus gets into the infection occurs by inhaling the virus from the nasopharynx or from the upper respiratory tract, and then it can locally replicate also, or then it reaches the blood and cause viremia, and it can locally replicate in the upper respiratory tract and also reaches the endothelial cells where it can cause the rash and arthalgia, which is the fifth disease. And otherwise from the here it can also reach the erythroid precursor cells in the bone marrow. In the normal host, what will happen, there will be slight drop in hemoglobin level, but in the patient who have immunoglobulopathy, it can cause chronic hemolytic anemia or life-threatening aplastic crisis. Pathogenesis and immunity. The virus enters the susceptible cells through the P blood group antigen receptor, which are present on the erythrocyte precursor. So, as it has tropism for the erythroid progenitor cells, which are present in the fetal liver cells or in the bone marrow cells. So, basically, these cells have a P blood group antigen receptors present on the cell, and they enter through these antigen receptors on the erythrocyte precursors, and once they enter the RBCs, the virus enters the nucleus and start replicating. After replication, it causes the lysis or the killing of the RBCs, and the production of RBC is stopped for approximately 1 week. And due to the killing of erythroid precursor cells by the viruses, so erythropoiesis comes to stop because of the excessive killing of these cells by the virus after replication and infection. So first initial stage is associated with flu-like illness, and this is caused by the presence of large number of viruses in the blood, that is viremia. During this time, the viruses would be shed in or present in the oral and respiratory secretions, and they can even cross the placenta. So highly it is contagious, highly infectious during this time, and because of the higher viral load present. Subsequently, later on, this viremia is controlled by the production of antibodies, specific antibodies against the B19 virus. So during this time, what happens? The rash and the arthralgia is the presentation of the second stage of the disease, and this is immunologically mediated. During this stage, what happens? There is a disappearance of B19 virus from the circulation and appearance of B19 virus specific IgM and IgG antibodies, and this leads to formation of immune complexes, and because of the formation of immune complexes, this leads to formation of erythematous rash and arthralgia. So host immunity, basically initial stage is seen by flu-like illness, second stage is seen by appearance of rash and arthralgia. So the primary, I would say the immunity is antibody mediated, and because of that the circulating antibody, it stops the viremia and are important in the resolution of the disease. Cell mediated immunity role is there, but it is not clear, it is unknown. So these are the 4 clinical syndromes you will see: flu-like illness, erythema infectiosum or fifth disease, infection in pregnant women, and chronic B19 infection. Flu-like illness, I've already told you, would be the first presenting manifestation, and there would be malaise, headache, myalgia, and rhinorrhea as common symptom. Then is erythema infectiosum is the second stage manifestation.